The noon sun beat down on the crooked row of storefronts, glinting off the windows of Dry Creek's trading post. Dust whirled through the air, clinging to faces and boots, and the sound of restless horses echoed down the street. Folks had gathered tight, whispering, wagering, waiting for the next sale. Clara Dunn stood at the center of it all, her spine straight despite the humiliation burning her cheeks. She was 28, her dress threadbare, her bonnet torn from travel. In her arms clung Ellie, a child of 6, too light from hunger and too young to understand the cruel spectacle. The town's debt collector, Hiram Blake, stood beside a crate with his ledger, his voice cut through the murmurs. The late Thomas Dunn owed this post $80 in change. His widow has no land, no kin, no credit. So I'm offering her services, housekeeping, laundry, and cooking, to any gentleman willing to cover her balance. A few men chuckled. A drunk at the back shouted, "Does the girl come with her?" Laughter rippled, sharp as broken glass. Clara tightened her hold on Ellie. "You'll not sell me nor her," she said. Hiram smiled, didn't reach his eyes. "It's not selling, ma'am. It's settling." He lifted his ledger. "Debt's debt." That's when Jed Carter spoke. He was a stranger, stood apart from the crowd, hat low, dust from the trail dulling his dark coat, about 34, with the lean frame of a man who'd spent too many nights under open sky. His voice carried quiet authority. "How much did you say?" Hiram turned, smirking. $80. Jed reached into his coat, drew out a few folded bills. "I'll cover it." The laughter stopped. Clara's head jerked toward him. For a moment, the street fell silent but for the wind. Then Hiram's grin returned. "Well, ain't that generous? Looks like you just bought yourself a housekeeper, mister." The crowd erupted again. Clara's face went crimson. She stepped forward, fury trembling in her voice. "I'm not for sale." Jed froze, the weight of her words slamming into him. "Ma'am," he began, "that's not what I—" But she'd already gathered Ellie and was pushing through the crowd, chin high, tears burning behind her eyes. Jed stood motionless as they disappeared into the dusty street, the bill still in his hand. The townsfolk laughed as they dispersed, but Jed didn't move. He felt a familiar sting in his chest, the kind that comes when you mean well and make everything worse. That evening, the storm rolled in from the east, swallowing the sun in a bruised gray haze. By dusk, rain hammered the roofs and flooded the wagon ruts. Clara crouched in the remains of an old sod shack a mile beyond town, its roof sagging, its walls half collapsed. Water trickled through cracks in the clay. Ellie whimpered softly against her mother's chest. "It's all right, sweetheart," Clara whispered, though her voice trembled. "We'll find work. Somewhere." She thought of the mine where Thomas had died, of the promises he'd made, the ranch they'd never owned, the debt he'd hidden until it swallowed her whole. She'd buried him with her hands blistered and her faith gone. Now, even the earth seemed to spit her out. Thunder cracked overhead. The shack door rattled, then creaked open. Clara's heart seized. She reached for the rusted poker by the fire pit. Jed Carter stood in the doorway, rain streaming off his coat. His hat shadowed his eyes, but his voice was calm. "You left town in a hurry." Clara rose, poker in hand. "You followed me?" "Just making sure you didn't freeze to death." "I said I didn't need your help." He took a slow step inside. "Yeah, well, sometimes folks say that when they do." Ellie peeked from behind her mother's skirt. "Mama, I'm cold." Jed reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a wrapped bundle, and set it gently on the floor, a tin of beans, jerky, a blanket. "Ain't charity," he said. "Just food. The storm's not easing till morning." Clara hesitated. Pride battled hunger in her chest. Then Ellie's teeth chattered, and the decision was made for her. She lowered the poker. "You can stay till the rain stops." Jed nodded once, wordless. He knelt by the hearth, coaxing flame from the damp wood. The small fire lit the room in a weak, flickering glow. They sat in uneasy silence. The storm howled outside, the wind whistling through cracks. Jed's hands were scarred, his movements careful, deliberate, like a man used to patching things that couldn't be mended. Clara watched him, torn between gratitude and suspicion. "Why'd you pay my debt?" she asked finally. He stared into fire. Didn't like how he talked to you. That's all. He shrugged. Ain't much more to say. The flames hissed. Clara turned away, murmuring to herself, every man who says that wants something. Jed didn't answer. He just sat still, the firelight flickering across the hard lines of his face. Outside, the rain fell heavier. Inside, the air thickened with warm smoke and unsaid truths. By midnight, the storm had dulled to a steady drizzle. Ellie slept wrapped in the blanket, her breathing soft. Clara sat near the fire, watching Jed mend a tear in his coat with a needle and thread. You travel much? She asked, surprising herself. He nodded. Drift mostly. Drive cattle. Fix fences. Whatever needs doing. No family. Had one once. He tied off the thread, eyes still on the coat. My sister, she was 16 when our folks died. I went off to work a ranch. Came back to find she'd been sold off to clear a debt. Never saw her again. The quiet stretched between them. Clara's throat tightened. She thought her own losses, her husband, her home, her faith in kindness. I'm sorry, she whispered. Jed's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. A moment later, distant hoofbeats broke the silence. Faint at first, then clearer. 2, maybe 3 riders. Jed rose instantly, rifle in hand. Stay put. Clara clutched Ellie. Who is it? He blew out the fire and moved to the window. Could be nothing. Could be trouble. Through the rain's blur, lantern light flickered between trees. Voices carried. That's her horse. A man called. The widow. Blake wants her back. Clara's breath caught. He's sending men after me? Jed turned, eyes hard. Looks like it. She backed away, panic rising. If they find you here, they'll say you took me. Then we best make sure they don't. He cracked the door open, slipped into the darkness, vanishing into the rain. Clara stood frozen, every nerve alive. Minutes crawled by. The wind hissed through the shack walls. Ellie stirred, whispering, Mama? Hush! Clara breathed, pulling her close. Outside came muffled voices. Then a single gunshot. Another. Silence. Clara's knees went weak. She moved toward the door, then stopped when it opened. Jed stepped inside, wet, tense, rifle smoking faintly. They're gone, he said, scared off. She stared at him, trembling. You could have been killed. He set the rifle down gently. So could you. Clara sank to the floor, exhaustion overtaking fear. I never asked for this. I know. The rain began again, softer now, like an apology from the sky. Jed looked at the small child sleeping by the fire, then at Clara. You should head west. There's land, work, folks who don't care what debt you owed. She shook her head. I've had enough of men telling me where to go. He gave a faint, rueful smile. Fair enough. For a long time, they sat listening to the rain. When Clara finally spoke, her voice was quiet. You could have left me there today. Would have been easier. Maybe, Jed said, but then I'd have to live with it. She looked at him, really looked this time. The scar by his temple, the steady calm in his eyes, the weariness that came from too many years of trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I don't understand you, she said. He shrugged. Don't need to. But she did, and that scared her more than the storm, more than the men hunting her. The fire crackled, throwing soft light over Ellie's sleeping face. Clara whispered, almost to herself, You think there's still a place out here for people like us? Jed's gaze lingered on the flames. Only if we make one. Outside, thunder rumbled far off, fading toward the hills. The storm had passed, but its echo stayed. Clara sat back, her eyes heavy but her mind wide awake. She didn't trust him yet, not fully, but something in her heart shifted, like the slow breaking of dawn after a long night. And somewhere deep down, she feared that this man, the stranger who tried to buy her freedom, was about to change everything. The morning broke gray and bitter, a damp wind sliding off the hills. Clara awoke to the smell of cold ashes and the distant echo of hooves. Jed was already outside, his rifle cradled against his arm, eyes fixed on the horizon. "They're coming," he said quietly. Clara stiffened. Ellie still slept, curled under the blanket. "You mean the same men from last night? 3 of 'em, maybe 4. They won't stop till Blake's paid or dead." Her heart lurched. "Then we can't stay." He nodded once. "Pack what you can carry." We move fast. They saddled his horse, a dapple-gray gelding named Hawk, and set off to the wet grass before sunrise. The ground was slick, the wind sharp. Jed rode ahead, scanning the ridge, while Clara clutched Ellie behind him. Every hoofbeat seemed to echo her racing pulse. By mid-morning, the shouts came, men behind them, maybe half a mile. "Go!" Jed barked. The horse lunged forward, mud flying. Shots cracked in the distance. Clara ducked, holding Ellie tight. The forest ahead loomed dark and tangled. Branches whipped her face. Gunfire echoed closer. Jed twisted in the saddle. Fired once, twice. One outlaw's horse stumbled, throwing its rider. They reached a river swollen from last night's rain. The water churned fast and brown. "We'll cross," Jed said, swinging down. Clara's voice shook. "We'll drown." "Not if you hold on." He helped her and Ellie down, pulling the horse by the reins. The current tore at their legs, icy and violent. Clara gasped, slipping once. Jed caught her arm, steadying her. "Don't fight it. Walk with the flow." By the time they reached the far bank, her legs burned, her dress clung heavy and soaked. Ellie coughed, shivering. Jed turned, watching the opposite shore. "They won't cross yet. Not till the water drops." Bought us time. Clara sank to her knees, chest heaving. Bought us time for what? To figure what comes next. He offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. For the first time, she didn't feel pity in his grip, just steadiness. They pushed on through the trees, the sound of the river fading behind them. By dusk, they found an old trapper's cabin tucked beneath the ridge, a leaning structure half swallowed by ivy, its chimney cracked but standing. Jed kicked the door open, checked inside, and nodded. Empty. Clara stepped in warily. The air smelled of dust and old smoke. A broken chair lay on its side. A few furs hung stiff from the walls. Ellie ran her fingers over a fox pelt, whispering. Soft. Jed built a fire while Clara stripped off her wet shawl and spread it near the flames. He cooked beans from his saddlebag, the smell filling the small room. "Eat," he said simply. Clara hesitated, then took a tin plate. Ellie devoured hers, smiling for the first time in days. Watching her child eat softened something inside Clara she hadn't realized had hardened. "Why are they chasing us?" she asked. "You said Blake wanted me back." "Why?" Jed stirred the fire with a stick. "Because a woman who says no makes a man like him look small. He can't stand small." Clara's eyes darkened. "He'll never stop." "Then we make sure he can't." Silence settled. The firelight threw flickering shadows across their faces. Clara studied him, his jaw unshaven, his eyes quiet but haunted. "You could have left me," she said. "I thought about it," he admitted, "but I didn't." "Why?" He looked into the flames. "I once left someone who needed me more. My sister, Lorna. I was 18. Went chasing work while she was stuck with our father's debt. When I came back, she was gone. Sold off like you almost were." Clara's throat tightened. "You never found her?" He shook his head. "Not even a grave." The fire popped. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Clara said quietly, "My husband gambled away everything we had. He said he'd make it right, but he died under the mine instead. I buried him with my bare hands, and the town buried me right after." Jed looked up, eyes meeting hers across the fire. "Guess we both been running from ghosts." Something in her chest eased at that. Not comfort, understanding. Outside, the wind whistled through the trees. Later, when Ellie slept, Clara sat awake, watching the embers glow. Jed leaned against the wall, his rifle across his lap. The storm had passed, but unease lingered. "Do you ever stop blaming yourself?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I tried once. Didn't take." Her voice softened. "Maybe you helped the wrong woman once, But tonight you helped the right one. His eyes lifted. You sure about that? She nodded slowly. I am. He said nothing, but a faint warmth spread in his expression. Something close to peace. The peace didn't last. Near midnight, a branch snapped outside. Jed's head lifted instantly. Get Ellie, he whispered. Clara shook her daughter awake. Quiet now, baby. Jed eased the door, peered through cracks. Lantern light bobbed between the trees. 3 figures, rifles in hand. Blake's voice carried through the woods. Come on out, widow. I'll make it easy on you. Clara's heart pounded. Ellie whimpered. Jed whispered. Under the floor. Now. He pried up 2 loose boards. Clara crawled in with Ellie, pulling the blanket tight around them. The air was cold, filled with the scent of dirt and pine. Through the floorboards, she saw Jed move, silent, deliberate, positioning himself by the window. The door burst open. Found ya, one outlaw sneered. Jed fired once, clean fast. The man dropped. Another rushed in. The rifle cracked again. Chaos erupted. Smoke filled the cabin. Shouting, gunfire, splintered wood. Clara covered Ellie's mouth, her heart racing so hard it hurt. Get her alive. Blake roared outside. A lantern shattered. Flames licked across the wall, hungry and fast. Jed coughed, firing again. Clara, go. She shoved the boards aside, dragging Ellie into the open. Smoke choked her lungs. The cabin burned bright as daylight. Jed staggered back, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his sleeve. Run. Clara grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the door. Not without you. They stumbled into the rain-soaked night. Fire roaring behind them. The forest glowed orange. Horses neighed in panic as flames spread to the trees. Blake's shout echoed through the chaos. You can't hide forever. Jed turned, aimed his rifle with his good arm, and fired one last shot. Blake's lantern exploded, scattering sparks. The outlaw cursed and retreated into the smoke. They ran until their legs gave out, collapsing by the riverbank. The rain hissed against the embers that clung to Jed's coat. He sank to one knee, breath ragged. Clara tore a strip from her dress and pressed it to his wound. Hold still. He tried to smile. You're getting good at this. Don't you dare die, she said, voice cracking. Wasn't planning to. She tied the bandage tight. The blood slowed. Ellie crouched beside them, eyes wide, silent. The night stretched long. Jed drifted in and out of consciousness while Clara kept watch, her hands trembling from exhaustion. Every time he stirred, she whispered, You did good. You got us through. By dawn, the fire from the cabin had faded to smoke on the horizon. Jed woke to find Clara sitting near the water, her hair loose, her dress torn, her face streaked with soot. Ellie slept curled against her. You should sleep, he murmured. She looked back at him, eyes rimmed with red, but steady. Can't. Not yet. He studied her quietly. The proud, guarded woman he'd met in the street was still there, but now there was something else beneath the grit and defiance. Strength. Fire. You saved us back there, he said. She shook her head. No, you did. I couldn't have without you. Their eyes met. Words weren't needed. The river rolled beside them, silver in the morning light. The woods were silent now, but both knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Blake won't quit, Clara said finally. No, Jed agreed, but neither will we. He tried to stand, winced, and she caught his arm, steadying him. Their hands stayed together a moment longer than needed. For what it's worth, she said softly, I'm glad you followed me that night. He gave a tired smile. Didn't figure you'd ever say that. Don't get used to it. He laughed quietly, then grew serious. You and the girl, you've got grit. There's a settlement a few days west. Fort Haven. We can make it if we move soon. Till you tell me otherwise. She studied him, then nodded once. All right, Cowboy. We'll do it your way for now. He chuckled weakly. Fair enough. As the first sunlight touched the river, Clara dipped her hands into the cold water, washing soot from her skin. She looked at the reflection, tired, bruised but unbroken. When she glanced back, Jed was watching her. "What?" she asked. He shrugged, just wondering how someone so strong ever thought she needed Savon. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I didn't. Maybe you did." He tilted his head, considering that, then nodded. Could be. The wind carried the smell of smoke from the burned cabin. Behind them lay ruin. Ahead, only open country. Clara rose, holding Ellie's small hand. Jed pushed himself to his feet, wincing but standing tall. Together, they turned west. The road ahead promised danger, but for the first time in a long while, Clara didn't feel like prey. She felt like someone who'd begun to fight back. And as they disappeared into the trees, the world behind them burned away with the dawn. Rain came hard across the plains that night, turning the dirt into sucking mud and the air into a hiss of cold needles. Eli led the horse through the dark, one hand on the reins, the other pressed tight against his bleeding arm. Clara followed close behind, her shawl soaked, her breath white in the freezing wind. They'd ridden for miles after the ambush near the old river crossing. 3 men dead, 2 more hunting still. They found shelter beneath a rocky overhang, half cave, half shadow. The fire Eli struck barely caught, its light flickering weakly over their faces. Clara sat across from him, eyes distant but fierce. "You should have left me back there," she whispered. Eli looked up slowly. "Can't say that's ever been my way, ma'am." Her lip trembled, not from cold. "You don't understand. Those men weren't after you. They were after me." He leaned forward. "Then I reckon we got something in common. Someone sure wants me dead, too." For a long moment, only the wind spoke, howling down to the canyon mouth. The fire cracked once, sharp as a gunshot. She turned her gaze toward the flames. "When I told you I wasn't for sale, I meant it. But I was once sold off in a deal between men who drank away their souls. My husband gambled our home, our land, and when he couldn't pay, he offered me instead." Eli's jaw set hard. "Who was the buyer?" Her eyes lifted to his. "The same man who hired those riders. His name's Silas Trent. Owns half the valley now. Calls it debt collection." Eli knew the name. Every man west of the Divide did. Trent ran cattle, guns, and people like his money stained with blood. He exhaled, slow and heavy. "You think he'll stop chasing?" Clara shook her head. "Not until I'm dead or his." Lightning flashed outside, showing her face, cut, pale, determined. For the first time, Eli saw not the woman he tried to save, but the one who'd survived worse than he ever could. He broke the silence. "We can run till dawn. Maybe reach Dry Creek before his men do." She looked straight at him. "No, I'm done running." Eli stared at her through the flickering firelight. "You're planning to face him?" "I'm planning to end this," she said softly. "One way or another." He didn't argue. He just reached for the rifle resting against the rock. Outside, thunder rolled across the plains like the growl of something old and angry. When dawn finally came, it came gray and cold. The fire had died to ash, and Clara was already saddling the horse. Eli rose stiffly, his wounded arm bandaged with torn cloth. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day I was sold," she said. They rode out toward the valley, 2 shadows against the morning mist, heading straight into the lion's den. By the time they reached the Trent Ranch, the wind had died. The land stretched flat and wide, the main house sitting like a dark scar against the pale sky. A dozen horses were tied outside. The smell of gun oil hung thick in the air. Eli stopped the horse behind a cluster of low pines. "Too many for a straight fight," he muttered. Clara slid down quietly, eyes fixed on the big white house. He always did like to make a show of things. She checked the revolver Eli had given her. Hands steady. "You don't have to come in," she said. He gave a low laugh. "Lady, I've been running from my own ghost too long. Maybe it's time I quit." They crossed the yard silent as shadows, boots sinking in the damp earth. A lantern burned in one of the windows. From inside came the faint sound of piano music, off-key and slow. Eli motioned for her to stay low. He pushed the door open with the barrel of his gun. The smell hit them first, whiskey, cigar smoke, and something sour underneath. Silas Trent sat at the piano, his back turned, playing a broken tune. His gray hair gleamed in the lamplight. "Never thought I'd see you again, Clara," he said without turning. "You and your hero." Clara's voice was steel. "Turn around, Silas." He did, smiling that slick, hollow smile. "You cost me a lot of money, darling. Now you come all this way just to die in my house." Eli raised his rifle. "That's close enough, Trent." But from the shadows movement, two men, rifles raised. The air cracked with gunfire. Eli dove for cover, returning fire. Glass shattered. The piano splintered. Clara dropped behind the table. Firing once, when the gunman fell hard. The other cursed and fled. Smoke filled the room. Trent ducked behind the bar, grabbing his pistol. "Still think you can change how this ends?" he shouted. "You were bought once, girl. You'll always belong to someone." Clara stood slowly, face lit by the burning lamp. "You're right, Silas. I belonged to fear for too long." She stepped out, aiming straight at him. The next shot echoed through the valley like thunder. Trent's glass fell from his hand, shattering against the floor. He staggered once, twice, then dropped beside the piano. Silence. Eli lowered his rifle. "You did what you had to." She didn't speak, just looked at the blood on the floor, then at the sunrise starting through the broken window. Outside, the plains were still. A few horses snorted nervously at the smell of smoke. Eli touched her shoulder. "It's over now." She turned to him, tears cutting through the soot on her cheeks. "It'll never really be over, but I can live with that." He nodded. "That's all any of us can do." They saddled up and rode away before the law came, back toward the open country, where no one asked names and the wind carried secrets far. For miles, neither spoke. Then Clara said quietly, "You never told me what you were running from." Eli smiled faintly. "A man who thought he could fix the past by shooting it. Did he ever succeed?" He looked out at the horizon. "Ask me tomorrow." The sun climbed higher, gold across the wet plains. Behind them, the smoke from Trent's house rose thin and gray, curling into the sky like a final prayer. The trail stretched ahead, endless and bright. And for the first time, Clara didn't feel like she was being hunted. She felt free. She glanced at Eli, his profile carved by light and dust. "You saved me," she said softly. He shook his head. "You were never for sale, Clara. You saved yourself." The horses' hooves beat steady rhythm across the land. Maybe, she thought, that was all the West ever asked of anyone. To keep moving, to keep fighting, and never let another man name your worth. By the time they vanished into morning haze, only the echo of their passing remained. Two souls bound not by debt or blood, but by the simple, stubborn will to live. And if you listen close enough, some folks say you can still hear the faint jingle of their reins of wind. Somewhere out beyond the ridge, where justice was written in dust and courage. So, what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this. The frontier wasn't just a place, but a test of spirit. Some failed, some endured, and some, like Clara and Eli, found freedom not in wealth or revenge, but in forgiveness. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Out here, every story deserves to be told.